It's so ironic that we don't want to hurt people, air quotes, and therefore we don't sell to them. But what happens is we over deliver for them and then go, well, what have you ever done for me?
Welcome to Brave by Design. I'm your host, Laura Khalil. I'm an entrepreneur, coach, and speaker. I love thinking big, exploring the power of personal development, and sharing the best strategies from thought leaders and pioneers in business to empower ambitious women and allies to bravely rise and thrive. Let's get started.
Everyone, welcome to this episode of Brave by Design. When I saw the bio for our guest today, I basically was like in a fit of glee because Annie P. Ruggles is like, seriously, and I'm looking at her right now on Zoom, she is an alternate version of me. And if you guys know what I look like, I'm the light and Annie's the dark right now. And this is like incredible. So anyway, who is she? Annie P. Ruggles. She is the founder and dean of the Non-Sleazy Sales Academy, guys. Annie, I just want to get right into it. Can we just get into it? Because I am so excited that you're here.
I mean, I have never been introduced before and credited with causing a fit of glee. So now all I want my bio to be is just Annie P. Ruggles induces fits of glee. The end. Thanks so much for having me. I'm out.
Like, people would be crazy not to have you on their show. And we just spent a bunch of... It's true, though. And we spent a bunch of time catching up before we recorded. And I just adore you. And I wanted to have you on because I run my own business. We have people who are listening to this who are either going through career transition and considering starting their own business, starting a side hustle. We have people, even potentially asking for raises and stuff like that, or re-entering the job market. And the number one thing that I hear from people when we talk about why their business isn't getting off the ground is they say, I don't know how to sell. And in fact, a level deeper than that, they think it's bad.
Yes.
And that's why I want you here. So let's start off. I want to hear your story about how did you come up with the Non-Sleazy Sales Academy? Did you always love selling?
Oh, hell no. Hell no. No. If you would have told me, like, if a time machine exists in time and you decide that you're going to take your opportunity, don't know why, but to go back in time and tell me that I would be teaching sales, I would probably weep. Like, I would just be like, what are you even doing? Like, why would you even tell me something so hateful and horrible? My background is in musical theater. Maybe I thought I would be in a musical about sales, but no. But, being just out of college with a musical theater degree, it's kind of important to find this thing called a job. And
what were you thinking of doing?
I was really thinking that I was probably going to act for a while professionally in Chicago if I could like hack it, and then probably teach like theater or voiceover or something that I was doing or teach like jazz dance or something in that vein. And I loved that. And that was great. But at the time I was like, 20 something and little and cute and wide-eyed. And so they put me on a reception desk at my job, which was for like the major musical house in Chicago. And I loved being a receptionist because it just felt like improv, like all the time. And they didn't even care, although sometimes it was embarrassing, like when the CEO would call. But like I would answer the phone in voices just to like crack myself up. I'd be like, Broadway in Chicago, how may I help you? Like all the time. And they'd be like, Annie, enough with the voices. I was like, okay, I'm sorry. But I don't know, maybe because I was kooky, they were like, hey, she's memorable. So what happened was they loved to inside hire and their marketing assistant left. And I was sitting there and they were like, her, let's make her the marketing assistant.
The lady with the voices.
Right. The one with the voices. She seems well-adjusted. Not at all. Like what? So so they gave me this marketing job and this team of interns, and I'm 20. The interns are older than me. They have a marketing background. I don't. And they're like, hey, could you go order the 3 sheets? And I'm like, what the heck is a 3 sheet? What is going on in my life? And so that job was a miserable trial by fire of marketing. But it turns out years later that I did have some natural talent in it, because after I bounced around, as all 20 somethings with any communication based degree does, we pop over here and then we pop over there. And I decided, because it was, sometime in the aughts, that I was going to be this brand new thing called a life coach, that no one knew what it was. They all thought I was going to start coaching professional sports or dance moms or something. I'm like, no. I'm going to have you have happiness in your life because I'm 20 and full of it and happiness, of course. Right. So, And
but this is actually important, because we actually hear stuff like that a lot from life coaches.
Yeah.
I mean, and who are older than 20 that are trying to sell fulfillment.
And I love that. And I love coaching as an industry. But I, at that time, was looking for a foothold in entrepreneurship, and coaching was new and trendy. And I didn't really have a whole lot of skills. And so I was like, I'll be a coach. Not to say that coaching isn't amazing, because coaching really is. And now all of the coach listeners hate me. I'm not knocking it, y'all. But what I'm saying is,
Annie, can I interrupt you for a second? Because the point I was trying to make was not making fun of coaching. The point I was trying to make is that a lot of life coaches, a lot of coaches don't sell towards a tangible outcome that excites people. Right. And so saying you're going to be fulfilled. It's well, what does that even mean?
Right. What is the ROI on fulfillment? And that's challenging, right? But that's all the more reason. So when I was selling that for many iterations ago, I started getting clients, and I was like, cool, I must be doing something right. But my clients were not interested in me helping them live a fulfilled life. They were other coaches and new coaches who wanted to know why my coaching business was profitable. And the answer to that was my marketing. So I was like, apparently that crash course I took where I used to cry in the Broadway in Chicago closet was actually very valuable. Okay.
Wow.
And so I was like, listen, if I'm going to do this marketing for coaches thing, I'm gifted with obsessive compulsive disorder. I was like, let's let this lead and just deep dive all the way into this rabbit hole of marketing for this new field of coaching. And I did that for many years. And I loved it. I loved it so dearly. I took a weird foray into software for a while, but my focus was always on super small businesses. But I realized that the best marketing in the world doesn't get you across the finish line of selling. What gets you across the finish line of selling is asking for the sale. And so I started looking at myself. I always got to start my judgment with myself, which is why I'm like, I'm not picking on anybody who's sales avoidant. I'm not picking on anybody who sells fulfillment. I'm not picking on anybody, because I have done all of the things back asswards, okay? Just ridiculous. But I would watch these clients of mine who are knock down, drag out, brilliant, driven, gorgeous, saintly humans. I would watch these supernova people.
Yeah.
And then I would watch their businesses not even just start to fail. I would watch their businesses die to the point where then they'd be hiring me to go out back and old yeller their business with them. And I was like, this is not what I want for my life. Why is this happening? Why are some people killing it in this industry and others who are so talented are floundering? And the answer that I found was sales avoidance, that we're not making that ask because of the reasons that you said at the very beginning. We either don't know how, or we've absorbed enough from the culture to equate it with manipulation. And so again, I was like, listen, I got to figure out this sales thing, because I'm not going to keep taking money on copywriting and branding and all these other things if my clients are not going to succeed. So I started diagnosing sales avoidance in myself. Then I looked at my clients, saw it in them, and I said, okay, I'm going to spend the next year and a half learning everything I can about how to sell with ethics and integrity first. to remove all the sleaze from selling, but most importantly, how to re-educate people about what selling is and what selling isn't. And that was 2019.
Okay.
Early, I think January 2019, and now we're recording this in early February 2021.
I want you to go back to something you said, because I started screaming. So I want to make sure people hear that. And so let's just talk about this briefly, because this is quite honestly also been when I learned that marketing does not make sales.
Mm-hmm.
I come from a marketing background. I was doing brand marketing for years. I'm like, I can market the out of myself.
Mm-hmm.
But then I was like, it's not translating to sales. So I have experienced that personally.
Yep.
Tell us, why is that? Where do we go wrong? Because there's so much misinformation that people seem to think, oh, the doors will open and people will they'll hear about me and they'll just run in. Is that what happens?
So one of the things that is really jammed down the throats of marketers and people who need to market is the concept of know, like, trust. And I love this concept, but it's freaking incomplete. And that's the problem. For heart-centered business owners, or this is the same thing for people in corporate environments representing stuff they really love. This is not just entrepreneurs. But for people that want to share what they see as an inherent gift or talent in themselves with the world, we tend to be very precious about that, right? Because it's part of us. These are people that refer to their job or their businesses as their baby. This is their mission. This is their calling. This is their purpose. They're using capital letters here, capital letter P in purpose, right? Because of that, we tend to be capital letter P, very Lord of the Rings precious about these elements of ourselves. Okay. So what feels good is telling people about these aspects of ourselves and how we can help other people. That feels juicy. That feels sexy. We love that. We love standing on the corner and going, let me help you. Please, please, please. Let me help you. That's awesome. And then we're told along the way, what's the most important thing is when you're doing your shouting on the corner, that you're gathering those people together, you're staying top of mind, and you're garnering trust. Know, like, trust. Absolutely correct. Nothing wrong in that strategy.
Okay.
But then we take this little curve into the fact that we've been marketing to the same people and shouting the same song over and over and over and over and over and not getting anywhere. And that is because we're in this bubble of our own making, our own content, our own network, our own everything that feels really good and yummy and juicy because we're telling everybody how we can help. But sales feels like that is not the right energy for this lovely love bubble that I have created for myself and my prospects. And they love me without having to pay me. So why would I ask them to pay me? That'll cheapen everything. Ooh, now all of this is subconscious for the most part. Some of it is going to creep up from time to time, right? But if we're sitting there going, wow, I've created this beautiful home for myself on the internet and now ask for money. Wait, whoa, no, I can't do that. That's a violation of the code of conduct of my bubble that I have created.
Yep. And
right?
I think a lot of people, it's funny because as you talk, I can hear some of the resistance that I've had in myself. I mean, I can hear it. And I think a lot of people listening can really relate to this story of saying, why would I cheapen what I do? Or why would I make a commodity out of what I do?
Yep.
So then they're stuck. And then their business is going nowhere. And you're kind of watching.
Their business isn't a business. It's a non-filed nonprofit. You're behaving like a nonprofit, but you're not getting any grants because you're not a nonprofit. So what's happening is your client is getting ahead because of your blood, your sweat, your tears, and your literal sacrifice. You get the joy of looking like a martyr, which is, appealing.
Is that joyful?
No, it's not, but it feels purposeful.
Yeah.
Right? And it feels noble in a way to some people. But, the client goes on and on and on. And then what happens is after time, as our business erodes, as we exhaust ourselves, as we burn ourselves out in over marketing and underselling and not including ourselves in our own success, we become resentful of the people that we're trying to help. And not by design. We're not in this to turn around and start resenting people, but it's so ironic that we don't want to hurt people, air quotes, and therefore we don't sell to them. But what happens is we over deliver for them and then go, well, what have you ever done for me? I thought I made you all this money. Why are you still not paying me? Well, because I haven't asked you to.
Yeah.
Right?
Wow.
Like, I gave you all of this free content. Why haven't you brought me 5 referrals? Well, you haven't asked me to. But that resentment creeps in until I wind up alienating a person that I've bent over backwards to help because our relationship doesn't have boundaries and they can't figure out where I fit in their life. That is what we have to undo when we include ourselves in our own success and make that final step, which is saying, thanks so much for hanging out in my bubble. I love having you here. You're welcome to stay hanging out in this bubble. Download every single episode of the podcast. Please send it to the folks you know. However, this is the beginner's course. If you're ready for intermediate or advanced, I have more for you. Would you like to know more about that? Yes? Permission granted? Okay. How would you be interested if I told you that the price for that is this? That's all that selling is. It's saying all of this gooey goodness that I can give you costs this much. Does that work? Yep. Yes or no? There's nothing inherently bad about that.
Right. Absolutely. So when you're dealing with clients who have this kind of resistance, where do you start them off? What do you advise for someone who's just trying to crack this nut?
You need to redefine what selling is and what selling isn't. And you need, first of all, to practice some big time self-forgiveness, because if you think that sales is slimy, sleazy, nasty, manipulative, whatever, guess what? You're right, because you've been sold to terribly in the past. And no one can take that away from you, and no one can argue that. We have all been swindled. We have all been lied to. We have all been taken advantage of, every single one of us. And also in pop culture, it is constantly reinforced that salesmen are grifters, for lack of a different term, right? Like, we're always in it for ourselves. And so, yes, okay, if you don't want to bring that into your business because it seems like it's energetically misaligned, you are correct. But the thing is, that's not selling. That is manipulation, and manipulation alone for profit. That is greed. Yeah. Sales is not the synonym of greed, nor is it the mechanism toward achieving greed as a definition. It's not. Selling is saying, I would like to be compensated in exchange for what I am giving you based on a variety of factors, years of experience, and what's going to happen in the industry and beyond. That is what selling really is. So when you hear someone say, I'm allergic to sales, no, you're allergic to all the times that jerks made you buy stuff that weren't right for you. You're not allergic to selling. The next thing is to realize that if you are worried about hurting someone by selling to them, if you're worried about cheapening a relationship, cheapening your value, cheapening your reputation, remember that you can lead with ethics and integrity in the sale to buck that industry trend. That is not the only way to sell, and you can sell in the exact opposite way. But if you do not start including yourself in your recipe, if you do not start saying, hey, I need this amount of money in exchange for that. I'm sorry that money is the currency of this planet. I wish it wasn't. I teach all the currencies. I ask people for energy. I ask people for time. Those mean a lot more to me than money does in most situations. But I can't pay my mortgage with frickin' praise and podcast
exposure.
Yeah, exposure, right? Like, all artists have been told a million times, oh, well, exposure. Oh, well, so-and-so is going to come listen to this thing. Great, cool. Just like my friends don't necessarily understand what it is I do, my freaking bank is not going to be super thrilled when I say, listen, I know I'm behind on the bills this month, but the exciting news is that I have 436 followers on Clubhouse. They're going to be like, what? Like, I wish that money was not the currency on this earth, but it is. And when we're giving out goods and services, and especially services because there's only one of us, we have to have it be reciprocated. That's all that selling is. That's all it is. That's it.
There's a few things you mentioned that I want to point out. The first one is when you say to people, hey, this is what I'm doing, are you interested? You're giving them an opportunity to raise their hand. Yeah. We don't sell to people who, if they don't raise their hand, then they're not the people who are going to buy from you. It's not, that would be a weird situation, you shoving something down someone's throat. But if someone raises their hand and says, yeah, actually, I'm really interested, tell me more, they're asking to be sold to.
And therein lies the rub, right? Nobody wants to be the telemarketer that calls during Thanksgiving dinner. That's what we're concerned about. Right? Even the telemarketer that calls during Thanksgiving dinner doesn't want to be the telemarketer that calls during Thanksgiving dinner.
That poor person.
Right? That poor person. Exactly. But what we don't understand is that if you get that permission and then you drop the ball, you're actually hurting that person. If we're going to be that black and white, if we're going to be that bold in a stance, like, oh, I can't do this, it'll hurt that person. You're hurting that person by denying them what they're asking you to learn more about. You may not even want them as a client. They may not be able to afford you. What you have may be entirely wrong, or they may be a nightmare red flag everywhere client. You don't know that yet, right? But the way that I rant about this normally is if you decide that it is your life calling, capital C, purpose, capital P, to share your grandma's chocolate cake recipe with the world. You're like, I'm quitting my job in corporate advertising. I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm just going to open a cake cafe that only serves this one thing, which is my grandma's cake. Cool. All right. So you go to 97,000 grocery stores during a pandemic to get the exact right ingredients. You special order the cake plate from Europe. You get a new camera, a ring light for the cake that won't melt the cake. You know, you're doing all these experiments. You're Instagramming the cake. You're on Clubhouse talking about the cake. Change your whole LinkedIn to pictures of cake. You have this big grand opening. You run ads to it. You run ads to it and you say, hey, everybody, you're finally going to get to experience this beautiful, magical, wonderful grandma cake that I keep talking about for years and years and years. You spend all this money and all this time and all this energy telling everybody about this cake. And then everybody comes to your big, grand cake opening. You're pumping cake smell through the vents. Everyone's so excited. There's giant, holograms of the cakes everywhere. And finally, you bring out the cake. Everyone is just like foaming at the mouth, just drooling themselves into oblivion. They're so excited.
I'm drooling. I want to go have this cake. Yes.
You bring the cake out. It's about the size of a Hostess cupcake, and it's in a solid glass box with a lock on it. That is what we do when we overmarket and undersell. We say, look at this change you can have in your life. Look at this transformation. Look at this experience. Look at this moment. Look at this ROI. Look at this KPI, whatever it may be. Look at the transformation possible to you. Look at the passion and experience available to you. Please come and participate in this with me. Never mind, you can't have it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great analogy.
But that's just cake. What if I'm saying what I'm selling is, shamanic soul retrieval? Like, I'm telling someone that every single thing in their life that's causing them pain is caused by this rupturing of your very soul, and that through guidance you can get that back together and become whole again. Okay, so I'm so in love with the idea of being whole again. I'm so excited about not having this pain anymore. And then the shaman that I'm on the phone with goes, well, I'll give you like 24 hours to think about it because you know what? It's a little bit overpriced comparatively. And like, I can tell that you really want this. So, okay, here's what we should do. Why don't I give you one soul retrieval for free? And then from there, you can write me a testimonial maybe. And then like maybe tell your friends or, you know what? I'm sorry I wasted your time.
And you see this, Annie.
Yeah.
Wow.
I see it all the time. And it's one of those, like, you got to laugh about it so you don't cry about it situations.
Yeah.
One of the saddest and most fascinating things I ever did. Like, I stopped watching all true crime and Dateline for a while because I was like, I've got enough drama. Was I started listening to other people's sales calls.
Oh.
Yeah. And I would hear stuff like that all the time.
Oh, man.
We get right there. The rapport is there. The trust is there. The faith is there. In a lot of aspects, the credit card is in the hand.
Yeah.
And then the person goes, ah, and just finds the nearest off-ramp out of the conversation, out of that client's life. We got to stop being such teases because we talk so much about why we do what we do and how it can help others. There is a 1% commitment called crossing the finish line. The 1%. And that is the ask. And that is the 1% where we fall down. If we can just say this very simple phrase, and the cost for what I'm offering you today is this. Insert number here. If we can just get that sentence out and then shut our mouths and let the prospect think, then we will be mourning a lot less small businesses in 2022 than we do now in 2021.
That is incredible. So there's a couple things you said. Well, there's about a million things you said that I find interesting. let's it's a 30-minute show. What are we going to do? So one thing you said is you get the price out and then you shut up. And I wish people would stop talking. And I think that's really important to just highlight. Here's a question I have for you. And I'm going to get real with you about when people have asked me to coach them. Mm-hmm. And here's the thing. I'm unlike a lot of people in this industry. I love money. I'm excited. Like, hey, let's go. I enjoy what wealth can do for myself and how it can support my community. And that really is my motivation. If I can take money from Peter to pay Paul, yes, I will do it.
Yep.
Absolutely, no problem. That's why I worked in corporate and did corporate consulting for years. Because it's like, I can uplift the community with this money. That makes a lot of sense to me. Anyway, that's off topic. My point is, what happens when we are on it? Let's say someone says, okay, I've built up the muscle to ask. Mm-hmm. I built up the muscle to say, this is the cost, and I'm going to shut up. What do we do with clients at that point that, may have an objection to the price or may have other objections they bring up? Like they say, I have to talk to my partner about it, or I need to talk to my boss to get this cleared, or like, let me get back to you. And then, it's kind of like you're in a relationship or a bad relationship where you never hear from them again.
Yep.
And then that kind of decreases the confidence of the person who's trying to sell. And they're like, oh my God, did I do something wrong? Was the pitch bad? Mm-hmm. What's wrong with me? Mm-hmm. So what do you say to that? What do you say, one, to handling objections, and two, to people or prospective clients who do kind of disappear?
So, okay, first off, you said the magic word, like the Pee-wee word of the day, which for me is objections. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it.
Wait, Annie, I need to stop you right there.
Yes.
Because I have to tell you, I just moved into my new house.
Yes.
And I said, when people asked what my design style was, I said, it's mid-century modern meets Pee-wee's Playhouse.
Thank you.
So that's why I was like, you feel me.
Yes, I feel you deeply, deeply in my soul. But yes, the Pee-wee magic word of the day is objections. If you want an example of non-sleazy selling versus sleazy selling, the clearest night and day difference example is in how objections are handled. One of the ones you already mentioned was the I need to speak to my spouse objection. That is one of the big three objections of all time. You are going to hear that one a lot, and with good reason. I am a one-woman business. I am married. I will still consult my husband for validation and the benefit of letting myself talk and hear myself say it before I make any financial decisions. I don't need Ryan's permission to do things in my own business, but I'm still going to ask a trusted advisor.
Yes.
When I am even 1% uncertain. Now, the typical sales training that you will see, even in coaching, is, Laura, you're an independent woman. What do you need to talk to your husband for? What? Why? Like, you want this. Is it his money? Do you have like a joint account? Like, is he paying for this? Because like, I thought your business was really successful and this is for your business. And so like, why would you not prioritize this? Like, why do you need to talk to him? Hell no! Screw that! You don't know their life. You don't know their life. So if someone says to me, I need to talk to my spouse, I say, okay, how can I help you get that conversation going? Number one, do they want to talk to me themselves? Sometimes, instead of you playing middleman, if you think that they're going to have questions for me, the easiest thing to do is put them on the phone with me. How do you think that would land on them? Would they prefer that, or do they want to hear this from you? Then they can pick. If they say, hey, they want to hear this from me, I say, well, what does insert name of spouse or significant other or advisor here, what do they value? How will they know if this venture is successful? What information can I load you up with? What evidence, what factors, so that when you go have this conversation with your whoever, that you have all the information you need to get them to see things accordingly and buy in appropriately if it is the right choice. That right there is collaborative. That
is so collaborative.
Proactive. It is not going, Laura, your husband, what does he have to do with any of this? Doesn't he want you to be happy? Like, and the other one is money, right? The other one is money. Yeah. You are gonna get money objections. Sometimes
I can't afford it.
Right. Sometimes we use money objections to cover other objections because we're like, nobody's going to fight me on this. Sleazy selling will go, that's a cute top that you have on. How much did you pay for that top? How often are you going shopping? You know, a lot of people during COVID are doing a lot more online shopping. I bet if you stop buying yourself cute tops, you could afford something actually important like my coaching program.
Oh my God.
Ew! Freaking ew! If you want to sell with integrity, offer a freaking payment plan. Have a ladder of services. There's a billion different things you can do. But if you are parroting how you were taught to handle objections by someone nasty, if you change nothing else, change that. Look for the proactive way to handle objections, because objections are not a sign that you're not selling correctly. Objections are a sign that you are selling, interestingly, to a human being who is a complex individual with their own life and needs. Right? So first off, objections are not a red flag. They are a chance to double down on what matters, find a win-win, and be proactive, first and foremost. Now, on the flip, to anybody who's like, well, then I have to deal with rejection, or I have to deal with this or that, or, you know, the people that don't show up. It hurts.
Yeah.
You will live.
Keep going.
Keep going. But like, again, like I wish that money wasn't the currency on this planet. I wish that rejection didn't suck. I wish rejection didn't suck. I really, really do. I wish that it just rolled right off of us. But the thing is, every time we get rejected, if we keep the door open for that client, unless we close it, they can come back. I hear no's that then go out and refer me to other people, especially financial ones. They can't afford it, but their rich best friend can. So they're like, damn, I met with this girl the other day. I wish I could have hired her. I couldn't, but you should. If you slam the door in your own face after you hear a no, if you have these sleazy tactics, if you hunt people down and get really desperate about it, or if you're like, well, they didn't email me back within the 5-minute window that I said, so I'm out, right? If we don't follow up, if we don't follow through, and if we throw any version of sales hissy fits, we are killing the potential for that relationship to shift into something else.
That kind of foresight is really critical for people to understand is even if you lose a sale, you don't know what's going to happen. Even if you make a sale, you don't know what's going to happen. They're kind of both leading in unknown directions in some ways. I will say for my speaking business, my biggest referrals have been from people who, like, I do not personally know. Mm-hmm. They have just been silently in the wings, watching, referring me out, or people who have said, I'm sorry, we can't bring you in now, but we're going to keep you on the list, or we're going to keep you in mind for a future event. And they do. And it's really cool. My mom was a saleswoman, and she always taught me early on in my career, like 20 years ago, I was doing magazine ad sales. And she said to me, and I was literally pounding the pavement, like actually walking into businesses trying to sell. And I was terrified of it. And my mom always said to me, she said, Laura, it takes 9 no's to get to 1 yes. Mm-hmm. That every time you get a no, you just mark that no, because every no is getting you closer to the yes. And it really helped change. It is disappointing when people don't want to work with you. Absolutely. But it's also creating the space for the right client to come in, for the right company to come in. And that's what I find really exciting. Yeah. It's like, okay, you don't want to do it. That's okay. We're creating space for the right person to move through.
But what if you could learn from those 9 no's? What if you could refine your approach? What if you could listen really deeply and intently to the marks you didn't necessarily hit? What if you can gather the language that they used that was resonant with them and include that in your next pitch? What if your 9 no's can inform your pitch so beautifully that you get to that 1 yes faster and better and more in keeping with who you truly are? And also, what if those 9 no's can become brand evangelists for you and go out into the world and say, hey, there's something or someone you need to know about, and I'd like to tell you about it. Not everybody will be. Not everybody is peaches and cream. Not everybody is a wonderful client potential or a generous prospect that will go out into the world and advocate for you. Not everybody will. But if you play your hand right, and by that I mean if you show up in the version of yourself that will best showcase who you truly are as a service provider or maker or creator or whatever. If you show up in that vein, and if you are generous, if you are boundaried, and if you are professional, and if you are clear, and if you show grace and gratitude, they will go out into the world and they will bring business back to you, even if you got the no. That relationship does not have to stop at the no, ever.
You mentioned boundaries a couple of times. And I would love to so sometimes when I think of boundaries, and I teach about boundaries, we're talking about more in I'm talking about, relationships to people, like relationships to your mother, relationships to your family, your mother-in-law. When we're talking about boundaries as they pertain to your business, your sales cycle, what do you mean by that, Annie? What kind of boundaries should we be thinking about setting?
I especially want to call out to people that are in career transition or are thinking about starting a new entrepreneurial side hustle or endeavor. This is when this is going to be super important. At the beginning of something new, there is a little bit of acquired desperation, which is natural. It's new. It's a grand opening. You want to get as many people there as possible. You have no idea what's going to work. You're doing spray and pray marketing and just, living on a prayer. Okay. And that's natural and that's okay. But what happens is when we're trying to gather our first clients to us, when we're trying to get our first testimonials, when we're trying to prove value for the first time, what tends to happen is we let our boundaries get loosey-goosey with stuff like discounting, comping, offering products that are not part of your initial scope, delivering things on evenings or weekends, working 24 hours a day, skimping on family time or private time or personal time. A lot of that tends to go out the window because we're so fixated on blowing those first minds that will say, well, I'm not going to do this in the future, but for you, for this one time while I'm getting established, I'm going to throw, my boundaries and my expectations and my rates and my contracts and my everything out the window and say, yes, let's make a deal right now. The thing is, though, we don't often enough revisit what has gotten grandfathered in from those early times. And so we still may be operating in a business that is not boundaried enough to protect your number one asset, which is yourself.
I love that. I think that is absolutely brilliant. And I think a lot of people are going to relate to that, because when you are trying to get started, you're just trying to figure out sometimes what's going to work and what people want and what's going to stick. And that's, by the way, that's normal. Just for people listening, it's normal to try things out. Just try some stuff, see what works. They don't want that. Okay, try something else, or try different people. One thing, when I started my first business in 2013, I was doing marketing consulting. And when I kicked off, I'd just been laid off, and I said, to hell with the corporate world. I'm going to figure this out. I spent probably for the first couple of months, about 50% of my time doing business development, really just pounding the pavement. So I'd love, Annie, for you to give the audience a sense, because sometimes when people break out work, especially in service-based businesses, they never account for the time it takes to get new business.
Oh, Lord. I know that pain so well.
Yeah.
Right? It's kind of the same like magical math. It's like, well, if I want to sell 10, then I need to talk to 100 people or 1,000 people or whatever. It's kind of that like fake math of like the time of acquisition per client shouldn't really be that long. I have a half-hour consultation call, so it should be like 15 minutes for email, 30 minutes for consultation. Okay, so my cost of acquisition time-wise is about 45 minutes. Y'all. Oh my God, just here's the third truth. What was the first one? Like, I can't change that currency. Like, money is the currency. I can't change that rejection sucks. Everything takes so much longer than you think. Just know that that's not you. That is not a personal failing. That takes a long time. But the thing is, the truth of brand impressions and touch points is very freaking real. There is a tenacity element here, and there is a consistency element here. So the thing that I'm gonna say to cut that curve down is consistency, consistency, consistency. Because it's gonna take a long time. It's going to take a long freaking time. And when you do something consistently, it will make that time feel even longer because you're doing the same things over and over and over. But if you only say your sales pitch one time, if you only invite people onto your consult call one time, if you only show up at a networking event one time, you're not going to get anywhere. It's going to take 15 times longer. You need to build into the time that you do have consistent ways to get in front of your market from different angles over and over and over and over and over again. You got to invest the time to save the time.
So Annie, I love that you have to invest the time to save the time. For people, when they think about BD, do you tell them, hey, I recommend you spend an hour a day on trying things to reach out? Or do you recommend a percentage of time or anything like that?
It really depends on where they are in their business. And like, because there's so many seasonal and audience-based things on top of that. But for me, for my own business, which I can speak to, every single day that I'm working, because there's a boundary, every single day for Annie used to be 7. Every single day for Annie now is like 4 or 5, right?
Good.
Every single day that I am working, I am making sure that I am increasing my visibility. And every day that I am working, I'm making sure that the processes of my business are pointing to being purchasable. if every day I make sure that the mechanics are working enough, that my buy buttons work, that my ads are running, that my emails are going out, that the wheels are turning correctly, that the cogs of the machine are doing their job.
Yeah.
Every day I need to make sure that I am purchasable. Then the only thing that I really need to make sure I do every single day is stay visible. And I do that through following up on my emails, working on my podcast, being on your podcast, responding to the things I post on social media that people comment on. Like, that's the other freaking thing. It's like we put stuff out on social, we blow minds, people respond to us, and then we just leave them hanging. That's the cake all over again. Don't do that. Take time to socially listen as much as you post, right? So get in there, have conversations. If you can habitualize, if you can ritualize being more visible every day, which may be more verbal, doesn't necessarily have to be your face, but if you can become exponentially more visible every day, which you will just by showing up every day, then you're on the path to profit.
And you said something really important. You have the systems working in the background that enable people to buy. Mm-hmm. So for people who are listening, you don't need to have a podcast. You don't need to have an every social channel. You don't need to have a blog. You don't need to do pick something you want to do and just keep doing it, but then have those systems in place in the background. And that's really, I think, the key to growth. And I think that's where actually most service providers really go wrong, is they don't have that.
Oh, yeah. Because it's not fun. Systems aren't fun. Like, they're not fun. But you know what? They save you so much time that you can go do fun stuff that's actually fun and not just, air quotes, work fun.
Exactly. Okay. So we could talk for about, I don't know, 1 billion more hours, Annie?
Like 20 more hours, probably?
Yeah. This has been such a pleasure. I'm sure that the audience is really excited to understand how they can learn more about you, how they can also have non-sleazy sales systems and sort of have a reckoning with those self-limiting beliefs we have around sales. So how can they learn more about you?
So I have a free masterclass called Making Selling Easy Without Getting Sleazy. If you are used to feeling nauseous, anxious, overwhelmed, or gross when you sell, start there. It's about 45 minutes. It's got actionable tips on how you handle yeses, nos, not nows, maybes, but it's also got a lot of the mindset pieces to help you do those reframes. Now, whether or not you're a sales avoidant, if you are running a small business of any kind or you're about to take the entrepreneurial leap, I hope you'll also listen to my podcast, Too Legitimate to Quit, Instantly Actionable Small Business Strategies with a Pop Culture Spin. Every week, I pull together some freaking brilliant, whip-smart geniuses, have them nerd out about their zone of genius, but then we also pull lessons from some of their favorite pieces of pop culture. So if you are looking for that actionable feedback every single week, check out the show. But before you get on another sales call with that pit in your stomach, go check out my masterclass. It's exactly designed to get you out of that feeling.
Annie, thank you so much for joining us on Brave by Design.
Oh my gosh, it's been a complete pleasure.
I want to thank you for joining me, and remember to subscribe through your favorite app so you can stay up to date. And I would love your review. If you've enjoyed this episode, please leave a review and comment on Apple Podcasts. You can also keep in touch with me online. You can find me on LinkedIn, and I'm also on Instagram at Force of Badassery. All that information will be available in the show notes. Until next time, stay brave.